In this video, I'm going to be going through a full rundown of the installation and setup of a Futaba 3PV controller for an RC drift car. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Troy. This is Roadside RC. You'll tend to find me bashing and crawling and drifting and racing, plus doing product review videos and how-tos. And no matter which ready-to-run RC drift car you get, one of the best things you can do for any of them, whether it's the MST, the Yokomo, or even this Red Cat RDS that we have here, is you can update the controller on it. So this Red Cat came with this 2CE. This is their ready-to-run controller that comes on almost all of their vehicles. You know, the MST and the Yokomo both come with very similar controllers. The ability to more precisely control the vehicle, plus the ability to really fine-tune the gyro control, makes it 100% worth doing an upgrade to the controller for your drift cars. The first step is, of course, to get the controller out of the box. So today we're going to be using this Futaba 3PV. Open. It does come, I did get the one that does come with the receiver, the controller itself, easy packaging on the inside, a little precision instrument there for controlling and helping to set up and bind, and then a full instruction booklet, which will be very handy for us. After installing 4 AA's there in the bottom, we just come up here, power on, make sure that the controller works and that everything is good. I did want to make sure, if I'm honest, because it turns out the version that I bought is 100% in Japanese. So if you have Google Translate, that will be your friend. Otherwise, you can actually download the English version of the 3PV manual on Futaba USA's website. Now, on the car itself, you're going to have to remove the original receiver. You're going to then just be very careful as you unplug and make sure that you're moving things channel to channel. You notice the lowest channel here is actually a B channel, so it's not channel 1 for steering. Remember, channel 1 is steering, channel 2 is your ESC, and then channel 3 on here is going to be our gyro control. As it's bundled up in here, this current gyro, this Hexfly GX1, has a 3rd channel control that's currently not being used, receiver, and so with the factory controller, and so we're going to be using it here. Looks like I need to undo some zip ties and work free all of these wires. In order to secure the receiver down to the chassis, we're going to use some double-sided tape. I tend to use this thin stuff that I have from 3M. I can provide you a link down in the video description to multiple different choices. I tucked the receiver right back in there in the factory location, zip tied all the wires back up, and then had the antenna just come up and run right along the chassis here. Honestly, for RC drift, antennas don't matter a whole lot as long as you don't damage the antenna. You're very rarely very far from the car, so you could have literally just wrapped it up in a bundle and zip tied it under here just as easily. But that is it for the car side right now, because everything is plugged in. I'm going to get a battery, and then we're going to actually start doing the actual setup here with the controller and the car, and go through all the parameters within the controller of what you need to do. Now we're going to power on the controller first, make sure that it comes on. I'm going to then power on the car. I'm going to watch it just to make sure it doesn't run away on me. The first setup. Alright, so it sees everything. Steering is reversed, so we're going to have to work on that. Now I'm also going to check if we have throttle, but throttle is also reversed. But that should be the easiest one to solve, so we're going to start there. This is a typical Hobbywing ESC. You will have to look at your ESC instructions from the manual to see exactly how it works for you. But on the Hobbywings, you hold this button down and turn it on until it starts beeping. Leave the controller in neutral. You hit it once, it beeps once. Go to full throttle. Hit it, it beeps twice. Go to full reverse. Hit it, it beeps 3 times. Let off, and it should be back into programmed mode. And now forward is forward, reverse is reverse, and we have that. The easy part of this whole thing is now set up. First thing we need to do is we need to get it turning in the right direction. So if I turn left, the wheel currently goes right. So you can hit this right and left arrows, scroll all the way through to the REV button, and then I need to come in here on channel 1, which is steering, and we're going to reverse it. Now just like that, now right is right and left is left, so we are in good shape there. The next thing I notice is that my steering trim is a little bit off with this controller. So again, we're going to go through all of these metrics until we get back to trim, TRM. And we're going to go to channel 1 trim. And then we're going to start looking just a little bit. There we go. And we're going to get it where the car is now centered. Now note, when you do this, a lot of gyros do not like steering trim because they see that as the controller giving input, which means you may need to shut the vehicle off, turn it back on, and let the gyro reinitialize with this new steering center point. That is very, very important when it comes to gyros. If you have the ability on your car to actually adjust any linkage, like maybe there's a linkage between the servo and the steering rack, you can actually adjust that linkage, and then you can also leave your steering trim completely at 0. That's what I do typically with a lot of my cars. I'm not doing it here today, just to show you how you can do it on here. The next thing we need to do is you're going to have to reset the endpoints on your steering through the gyro because you don't want to overextend your steering. What I typically do up here, EPA is actually the endpoints, and you can actually see left versus right. It'll change there on the screen. I leave the controller endpoints at 100 and I limit via the gyro, and then as I drive, I'm just careful to not yank the steering over all the way one way and leave it there for a long time to burn out the servo. So as long as I'm not doing that, the servo endpoints being set via the gyro is all you need to worry about. I'll show you here how to do it on this Hexfly GX1, but clearly if you're running a different gyro, you would have to follow the instructions for your model. On this Hexfly GX1, you actually hold the endpoint button down while you turn the vehicle on. You should get flashing lights. All right, then we're going to turn the steering all the way one direction to our endpoint, where we want it to be. Hit the button, gives us some flashing, and this green stays solid with the yellow flashing. We turn the other direction as far as we want it to go. Hit the endpoint, we should get some flashes. As we let the steering come back to center, you can see the gyro reinitializes. Now we have reset the steering endpoints via the gyro. The next thing you're going to want to do is come over here to EPA. So again, that's the endpoint setting. That's how we're going to control the gyro. As I fired this up, the gyro is actually on channel 3 at negative 100%, which means the gyro should be very, 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 very sensitive. Now, I have not been running, I don't believe I've been running this gyro at that much gain based on the potentiometer on the top of it. I think I've been running it at like around 50%, so I'm going to crank this down to about 50. But I want to show you that if I crank it all the way down to 0, it turns the gyro off. So again, you can see the gyro's working here. At 0%, then the gyro is off and not functioning. It's always good to test that because then you know, is it really controlling the gyro gain or not? So I'm going to crank it back up to, again, about that 50%, which is where I've been running with this gyro in this car. Now is a good time to actually stop and give the car a test drive before you do anything else with this setup, because it's really important to know how it feels now before we start messing with anything else that we might want to touch on this controller. With the first test drive done, already very happy. Just even the ability to have a more precision controller like this Futaba compared to the factory controller makes a big difference just in the feel and the buildability of driving the vehicle. Ability to control the endpoints of the gyro on the fly and precision tune it in for the surface that you're at is also almost worth the price of admission. Car felt really good out there just as it sat, but there's a couple other things that I like to normally look at. I actually like to come all the way around to exponential. All right, so exponential channel 1, I leave that alone. All right, that's your steering, and I don't want any exponential on it. But on the exponential on the throttle side, on the forward, so you can see it has back and it has forward. I like to, on the forward side, I like to actually decrease exponential. Now what that should do is it numbs out the throttle response at the low end of the range. And then as you still come into it, when you hit full throttle, you'll still have full throttle, you'll still have all the power. But in the lower range, it'll kind of numb out your power delivery. I find that helps make a much, much smoother drift. So there is no right answer for where you want your throttle exponential to be set at. You just have to play with it and see what it is. On a lot of my cars, I will use it somewhere in that 50 to 75% range. That is my personal experience of what works the best. You just got to try it and see what the feel is. Honestly, folks, it's just that simple. That's all that I normally do for setup in my controller, but now I have a little bit more precision control over the car. Plus I can control the gyro and I can put some exponential in there. All of that, just that step up is definitely worth it compared to your stock radios. Now with that being said, I don't know if the Futaba 3PV is actually my first choice. It does most of what I would want it to do, but there is some limitations. Like the channel 3 control, I noticed, was only in one direction, and when I reversed it, it wouldn't change polarity. So there are some gyros like the Futabas that are positive versus negative AVCS on or off. The one that was actually in this car is also the same way, and I was just fortunate that how the 3PV is set up happens to put that gyro into AVCS mode. I would honestly recommend, if you're watching this video and you're looking just how to set up because you've already purchased it, then I hope this was helpful for you. But if you are looking at purchasing a controller for an RC, rear-wheel drive RC drift car, I think I'd still save the money and wait until I could get the Futaba 4 channel or like the Noble NB4. I've tested both of those. I use both of those on a regular basis. They have just that level extra of functionality and control, and you're gonna get a controller like this and you're gonna have it for years. This isn't some just get it, throw away, you're gonna get rid of it whenever you get rid of the car. You're gonna have this controller through multiple vehicles. I have my nicer controller set up on probably 3 or 4 different vehicles, and I use it for racing and for drifting mainly. And I've had it for many, many years now. So it's really worth it to save that little bit of extra money and maybe get the slightly nicer Futaba or that FlySky Noble. And so I'm gonna put a link to those down in the video description. If you are considering buying a nice controller, please consider saving a little bit of extra money. If you already have the 3PV, it's a good upgrade from the baseline, but it's probably not one that I'd recommend long term. So anyway, I hope this was useful for you. Thank you for watching. If you have any other questions about RC drift stuff, I have a whole RC drift tech playlist over here. All the tuning, all the advice, all the managing and modifications to drift cars that I've done will be in there. So hopefully if you have any other questions, it might be in one of those videos. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.